Before we peel back the curtain on the digital ghosts that haunt your machine, I invite you to join our circle of knowledge. Subscribe to this channel now and ensure that you are never again a victim of your own ignorance in the face of rapidly evolving technology. By the end of our journey today, the cryptic language of manufacturers will no longer hold power over you. You will understand the fundamental heartbeat of your devices, moving from a mere consumer to a master of your tools. Let us begin this exploration of the invisible forces that define your digital life. The world of computing is built upon a foundation of memory. Yet many users treat the terms RAM and ROM as if they were interchangeable synonyms for storage. This confusion is not merely a linguistic error, but a fundamental misunderstanding of how a machine thinks and breathes. When you choose a laptop or a smartphone based on a number without knowing its purpose, you are gambling with your productivity and your peace of mind. To master the machine, one must first master the distinction between the fleeting thought and the permanent law. Only then can you make a purchase that serves your needs for years to come. Performance is not a vague magic that exists within a device, but a calculated result of how these two components interact. If your computer stutters while opening a browser, or if it takes an eternity to wake from its slumber, the culprit is hidden within these specifications. We often blame the processor or the internet speed. Yet the silent struggle between RAM and ROM is usually where the true bottleneck lies. Understanding this relationship is the first step toward reclaiming your time and ensuring that your technology works for you rather than against you. By diving deep into these technical definitions, we uncover the hidden architecture of our modern existence. Let us first turn our attention to the volatile spirit of the machine, known as random access memory, or RAM. Think of RAM as the desk upon which you lay out all the papers you are currently working on. It is the high-speed workspace where your computer keeps the data it needs right now, at this very microsecond. When you open a video editing suite, a complex game, or even a simple text document, the computer pulls that information from slow storage and places it into the lightning-fast embrace of the RAM. This allows the processor to access what it needs without any delay, creating the illusion of instantaneous response. However, the power of RAM comes with a specific, haunting limitation. It is inherently volatile. This means that the memory is like a dream that vanishes the moment you wake up, or, in this case, the moment the power is cut. If you are typing a masterpiece and the battery dies before you hit save, that data is dissolved into the void because the RAM requires constant electricity to hold its contents. It is a temporary stage, a place of intense action and rapid change, where information is constantly being overwritten as you move from one task to the next. Without this transient workspace, our modern experience of multitasking would be an agonizing crawl through mud. The capacity of your RAM directly dictates how many papers you can have on your desk at once without things falling onto the floor. When you run out of this precious space, the computer is forced to swap data back and forth between the RAM and the much slower permanent storage, causing the dreaded lag we all despise. This is why a device with 8 GB of RAM feels vastly different from one with 32 GB when handling demanding software. It is the difference between a cramped cubicle and a sprawling executive office. The more space you have to move, the faster you can reach your goals without the friction of a crowded mind. To understand the deeper mechanics of this speed, we must look at dynamic random access memory, often referred to as DRAM. This is the most common form of RAM found in our consumer electronics, and its design is a marvel of microscopic engineering. Inside a DRAM chip, millions of tiny capacitors act like microscopic buckets of water, holding an electrical charge to represent a bit of data. However, these buckets are leaky by nature, and they lose their charge almost as soon as they are filled. To prevent data loss, the system must constantly refresh these capacitors thousands of times every second, pumping electricity back into them to keep the information alive. In contrast to the constant maintenance of DRAM, there is a more elite sibling known as static random access memory, or SRAM. SRAM does not rely on leaky capacitors, but instead uses a complex arrangement of transistors that can hold their state indefinitely as long as power is supplied. Because it does not need to be constantly refreshed, SRAM is significantly faster and more reliable than its dynamic counterpart. However, this complexity makes it much more expensive to manufacture and physically larger in size. This is why you will typically find SRAM used in small critical areas like the CPU cache, where speed is the only thing that matters, while DRAM handles the bulk of your system's memory needs. The trade-off between DRAM and SRAM is a classic study in the economics of performance. Manufacturers must balance the need for massive amounts of memory with the reality of production costs and power consumption. When you look at a high-end gaming laptop, you are seeing the result of this delicate dance, where different types of RAM work in harmony to provide a seamless experience. One provides the volume needed for modern software, while the other provides the razor-sharp speed required for the most intense calculations. It is a hierarchy of memory that reflects the hierarchy of our own cognitive processes. Now, let us step away from the chaotic, fleeting world of RAM and enter the realm of the permanent, known as read-only memory, or ROM. If RAM is the temporary workspace, RAM is the foundation of the building itself, the immutable laws that govern how the machine functions. RAM is non-volatile, meaning it retains its information even when the power is completely removed. It is where the most essential instructions are stored. The primal code that tells the computer how to be a computer before it even knows it has an operating system. This is the silent guardian that waits in the dark, ready to spring into action the moment you press the power button. When you flip the switch on your device, it is the ROM that initiates the booting process. Often through a system known as the BIOS or UEFI, it performs a quick check of the hardware, ensuring that the screen, the keyboard, and the storage are all functioning correctly. Only after the ROM has verified the integrity of the system does it hand over the keys to the operating system stored on your hard drive. This ensures that the computer has a consistent starting point, a set of instructions that cannot be easily accidentally deleted or corrupted by a virus. It is the digital equivalent of our DNA, providing the fundamental blueprints for life. The nature of ROM has evolved since the early days of computing, when the data was literally burned into the chips during the manufacturing process. In those times, once a ROM chip was made, its contents could never be changed, much like a printed book. Today, we use more flexible versions like electrically erasable programmable read-only memory, which allow for firmware updates while still maintaining the non-volatile characteristics. This allows manufacturers to fix bugs or add features to the hardware's core logic without requiring a physical replacement. Yet, the primary purpose remains the same: to provide a stable, unshakable bedrock for the machine's operation. In the grand architecture of a computer, ROM is purposefully designed to be slower and more economical than RAM. Since the data in a ROM is accessed primarily during startup or for specific hardware tasks, it does not require the blazing speeds that are necessary for running modern applications. This slower speed is a deliberate choice, prioritizing stability and longevity over raw performance. It would be a waste of resources to use expensive, high-speed memory for instructions that are only read a few times a day. RAM is the patient librarian of the system, holding the vital records that keep the entire structure from collapsing into chaos. Because ROM is manufactured in vast quantities with a focus on durability, it is far cheaper per unit than the high-performance RAM chips. This economic reality allows devices to have the necessary boot instructions without significantly driving up the price for the consumer. It is a specialized tool, built for a specific and vital purpose, rather than a general-purpose memory. When you understand why ROM exists, you begin to see the intelligence behind the design of your devices. Every component has a role, and the slower, cheaper ROM is just as vital as the fast, expensive RAM in the overall ecosystem of the machine. To truly grasp the distinction, we must look at them side by side in a final comparison. RAM is the memory of the now, characterized by its incredible speed, its high cost, and its volatile nature. It is the workspace for your current tasks, the buffer between your intent and the machine's execution. ROM, on the other hand, is the memory of the always, characterized by its stability, its lower cost, and its non-volatile nature. It is the permanent storage for the system's soul, the instructions that define the machine's very existence. One is built for the flash of a second, the other for the duration of a decade. Consider the physical form of these two components as well. RAM often comes in the form of removable sticks that you can upgrade to breathe new life into an aging computer. It is designed to be accessible, reflecting its role as a dynamic part of the system's performance. ROM is typically a small chip soldered directly onto the motherboard, hidden away from the average user's sight. It is not meant to be changed or tinkered with by the casual observer. This physical difference mirrors their functional difference. One is a modular tool for performance, the other is an integral part of the machine's core identity. In the end, the difference between RAM and RAM is a reflection of the balance required in all complex systems. We need both the ability to change and adapt quickly and the stability of a firm foundation. If a computer were all RAM, it would be incredibly fast but would forget how to function the moment it was turned off. If it were all ROM, it would be incredibly stable but would be unable to perform any modern, complex tasks. It is the tension between these two types of memory that allows our digital world to exist. By understanding this balance, we can better appreciate the invisible complexity that we carry in our pockets every day. As we conclude this exploration, I want you to reflect on the nature of your own memory and how you build your life. Just like a computer, we have our RAM, the fleeting thoughts and temporary stresses that occupy our minds during the day. We also have our ROM, the core values and foundational lessons that define who we are at our very center. Often, we allow our temporary RAM to become cluttered with unnecessary data, causing us to slow down and lose sight of our core instructions. The lesson here is simple. Protect your permanent foundation, but give yourself the space and the resources you need to process the present moment effectively. Ask yourself, what is the ROM of your life? What are the unshakable principles that allow you to start your day, no matter how much power you lost the night before? And are you investing enough in your RAM, giving yourself the mental workspace to handle the complexities of the modern world? Understanding the tools we use is the first step to understanding ourselves. I wish you great health, clarity of mind, and the wisdom to choose the right tools for your journey. Please subscribe to this channel to continue this path of discovery with us. And may your digital and physical lives always run with perfect synergy.